I mean, I would just say the internet and being able everything at your fingertips for overnight delivery. And COVID has thrown like a little bit of kinks in the overnight delivery, but I realized whenever I came back to work after the shutdown in 2020, I came back in the fall and the struggles that UPS and FedEx were having and shipping wasn't as fast, realized how much we had relied on overnight shipping or and it could affect us in so many ways. Sometimes there's last minute casting and being able to get whatever this crazy item is shipped from anywhere overseas or something at your fingertips from the internet. I think that is the biggest change. And we, myself included, and I know directors and producers are used to pretty much an immediate response. I want this and you can get it. So I think the industry is a little bit different because everyone has access to everything all the time.
I think some of the main differences is the budgets and time constraints. Since the uptick of streaming, it's really changed the industry. They've been squeezing us anywhere they can. So, we've always worked really long hours and that's been fine. But the amount of content that we have to produce has really caused a lot of stress. So, streaming, although we love it and we have it in our homes and we're addicted, the people that are making it, we have come across some difficult issues.
You just heard from Lindsay Keir, owner of The Costume Consultant and the sponsor of today's video. Get a free 10-minute discovery call with Lindsay. More on that at the end of this video.
For me, the simple answer is technology has changed how we work, how we source things, how we find vendors, how we can communicate with actors or producers. Everything is quicker, but there's also a lot of it's a bigger answer than that. There's technology in how we're producing costumes, whether it be 3D illustration, 3D printing, all of these elements that technology is really shifting how we do it, but also how we consume the content, right? I think for me, that's the biggest impact in the last, I've been doing this more than 15 years, so pretty close to that 20 years, but having the access of information, I think is changed the game entirely. Yeah.
From my perspective, the difference in the business from 20 years ago is I believe that the bar has been raised. When I think about the productions that I worked on in the 90s, they were much tighter and much less complicated. Now there are still small projects being done, often because of budgetary restraints. But well, when I think about a show that I did, like Eloise, or even Hannibal, which was only 8 years ago, I can't actually believe how small my crews were. I mean, we worked with a real skeleton crew. Um, Nowadays, the productions that I've been involved in often have, well, between 20 and 40 people as a base, and then more people added on for extra days. I just think that there's a lot more visual effects, a lot more stunts. Might be the projects I'm doing, but in general, even for the projects that are smaller, there's a real expectation of quality, and I also think, and this is actually very marked in my mind, that there's a much greater interest in costumes. I did a project called Eloise at the Plaza, and then another one called Eloise at Christmas time with Julie Andrews and Jeffrey Tambor and Christine Baranski, all these great actors. And when I went in for the initial interview, I talked to them, and well, before I went into for the interview, I was warned that they wanted to do the project contemporary, and the books were written in the 50s. So, and the illustrations were very whimsical and beautiful, and it's also iconic in the States. You know, not just in the iconic word that is thrown around nowadays. They truly are iconic. I mean, every kid in you know, child, girl in America knows about Eloise and living in Plaza with her nanny and her mother's off, you know, gallivanting around the world. So, from in my perspective, I wanted to really represent. If I got the job, I wanted to represent the way these stories were conveyed visually, and so I made up 2 boards or multiple boards, and the first set was all contemporary looks and silhouettes and colors and that type of thing, which I presented at the beginning of the interview. And then I said, or if we want to do it period as the books were, we could do this. And, you know, I showed all the Dior silhouettes and you know, the designers at the time and the colors. And I think the real fear is, back then anyway, was that a young audience would find it old and stale. And I said, well, if you do the costuming the way it was at the time and shoot it correctly, it will look fresh and new and exciting and interesting. So after I did the presentation, they said, well, we like these period looks better. And I said, thank you. And we did a period. But I think that's a big change now, is that producers, I think, you know, producers and directors, they know that costuming is really a very important element to the storytelling. And I'm not sure it was really acknowledged that same way. I think the Costume Guild in LA, you know, I think it was formed probably in the late 50s with a few key designers. But they've been battling for recognition of costume designers for decades. And I mean, they've done an amazing job. They really have elevated the status of costume designers. But, you know, it's still, when you do your negotiation for television, it's still a major battle to get a credit as a costume designer at the beginning. There's like all the executives are listed and the production designer and the editor and whatever, but it's not standard to list the costume designer. So every project that I do, I have to, and I'll never commit to it at the beginning. You have to kind of go through the project, and hopefully they like your work. And if they're, you know, there's a lot of, there are a lot of reasons, I'm sure, why, you know, it's an issue for them, but I've just actually never understood it, especially now that people are interested in knowing who did the costumes.
Are you interested in working in the costume industry but don't know how to get started? The Costume Consultant, created by Lindsay Keir, is a service specifically designed to support your dream of finding costume jobs as well as advancing your career. There is a common misconception that costuming work is only for people who live in cities like Los Angeles or New York, but this simply isn't true. Lindsay has been part of costume teams all over the world, including Canada, the United States, Australia, and Hong Kong, and she can help you turn your passion into your career as well. So set up a free 10-minute discovery call with Lindsay. Click on the link in the description below and begin your journey today.